Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going straight to rural Cambodia to look at a story that, honestly, it kind of flips the script on how we think about solving public health crises.
It really does. It's a fascinating case.
Our mission today is to figure out how this organization, Hydrologic, managed to scale up clean water access, where so many traditional charity models have, kind of stalled out.
And it really is a story about product design and market segmentation.
Right, and this discovery that even the lowest income consumers are driven by aspiration, not just desperation. But to get there, we have to start with the problem. And it was a huge one.
It was a catastrophe, really. At the turn of the century in rural Cambodia, you had this devastating clean water crisis. We're talking about nearly 10 million estimated cases of diarrheal illness every year.
Wow, 10 million.
And that resulted in roughly 10,000 child deaths annually. And the cause was, families just had no choice but to use contaminated surface water or shallow, untreated wells.
That human cost, it's just staggering. But what really jumped out at me from the sources was the hidden cost, the economic drain of the only solution they had, which was boiling water.
It was a massive drag. A drag on productivity, on the environment. Boiling works, of course. It kills the pathogens, but the effort involved was just immense.
Oh, immense are we talking?
The sources show that families and this labor, it almost always fell to women and girls, were spending up to 22 hours every single
week. 22 hours.
Just gathering wood or charcoal and then tending the fire to treat their water.
You have to stop and think about that.
Yeah.
22 hours a week is basically a full-time, unpaid job. And it's time that's taken away from farming, from education, from just rest.
Exactly. It's a labor cost that keeps families trapped in that cycle of poverty. And then you have the environmental side. That constant demand for fuel was a direct contributor to Cambodia's deforestation rate, which was one of the highest in the world.
So it's a vicious cycle. Disease, this huge labor burden, and environmental damage all feeding into each other.
And that whole context created this absolute need for a better way. So around 2001, organizations like IDE International Development Enterprises, they started introducing household ceramic water filters.
And the technology was good.
The tech itself was proven. Early studies confirmed that people who used them had nearly half the incidence of diarrheal disease. So yeah, the technology worked.
But, and this is the core of it all, a working piece of tech is only half the battle, right? The real problem was scaling it, making sure people used it long-term in these really remote places.
Precisely. A great filter sitting in a village chief's office doesn't solve anything if it's dependent on the next grant cycle to get there.
So that need for a sustainable, self-perpetuating delivery model, that's what led to Hydrologic.
That's the aha moment. It's what prompted their whole pivot from being an NGO program to a full-on social enterprise designed to survive in the market.
Okay, let's unpack that shift. So Hydrologic officially spins off from IDE's program and registers as a company in Cambodia in late 2010. Their mandate was, what? To commercialize and expand production and sales.
Exactly. And that dual mission is so key to understanding social enterprise. They had to balance their social impact, improving water and sanitation for these low-income rural households, the base of the pyramid market, with being a viable business.
Because if the business fails, the social impact just stops.
It evaporates. And the core product they built this whole enterprise around was this locally made ceramic filter, which they branded as the Tunsai.
The Tunsai, which was a brilliant marketing move.
Oh, incredibly smart. Tunsai is the Khmer word for rabbit. And in local folklore, the rabbit is this clever, resourceful creature. So by using that name, that logo, they immediately gave the product a sense of cultural relevance, of trust.
It wasn't some foreign donated good. It was Cambodian.
Right. And the benefits were so clear. The filters needed no electricity, no fuel, so that 22-hour weekly burden
vanished.
And the local manufacturing created, I think, over 150 jobs by 2013. Plus, it was guaranteed to remove over 99.99% of bacteria.
And what about the cost for the family, the economics of it?
Well, because it was all locally sourced and made, they kept costs way down, avoided import tariffs. And one analysis suggested that a filter saves a family about $73 a year.
$73?
Yeah, between fuel they no longer have to buy, fewer medical bills, and less lost productivity. So that initial cost is paid back very, very quickly. It just made sense.
A huge measurable value.
Yeah.
But this is where Hydrologic gets really interesting. They didn't just stick with one product. They created this two-tiered strategy, which is where you start to see how well they understood their market.
That's right. They knew the base of the pyramid wasn't just one big group. It has different income levels, different aspirations.
So let's start with the entry-level one, the basic Tunsai. This was the workhorse.
The utilitarian model. Yeah.
It retailed for what, 12 to 15 US dollars? And this was the one that was often sold in bulk to other NGOs for the absolute poorest households, the people living on less than $1 a day.
It was the safety net. Pure function, maximum affordability.
But then, around 2011, they introduced the upgrade, the Super Tunsai.
And this was a totally different beast.
It was a real step up. It had a larger capacity, up to 14 liters, which is great for a family. But the key thing was the design. It was just more attractive. It looked better.
Much better. It had a sturdy stand, a better tap, a clean aesthetic. One was functional, the other was desirable. And it was priced higher, between $20 and $36.
Now, this is the critical business decision. This is the part that I think defines their whole approach. Hydrologic deliberately restricted the Super Tunsai from being sold to NGOs or used in any free distribution programs.
Which, when you first hear that as a social enterprise, it feels wrong. It feels counterintuitive.
It totally does. Why would you stop your best product from getting to the people who need it most? It feels like a really tough compromise.
It's a difficult trade-off for sure, but it speaks directly to their long-term survival. The Super Tunsai was positioned as an aspirational product. It was targeting households with slightly higher but still very low incomes, maybe $2 to $5 a day. And that restriction was about protecting the market. If NGOs started giving away the better-looking, more desirable product for free, it would have completely destroyed Hydrologic's commercial market.
It would undercut them. No one would buy one if they could get a better one for free.
Exactly. It would have ruined their margins on the premium model, which they needed to keep the lights on and fund all their operations. The higher margins from the Super Tunsai were basically designed to subsidize the high costs of reaching those truly remote communities.
So selling the premium product allowed them to sustainably serve everyone, including the very poorest, with a basic model.
It was the key to making the whole thing self-sustaining.
That makes sense. It's a tough call, but it makes business sense.
Yeah.
So they have the products, they have the pricing, but getting a heavy, fragile ceramic pot into a remote village where people have very little cash, that's a huge challenge.
The last mile distribution problem.
Yeah. How do they solve that?
They used a hybrid model, but the real innovation was their direct village sales force. They called them clean water experts. They didn't wait for customers to come to a store.
They went to the customer.
They brought the store, the product demo, and the financing directly to the villages.
What did that sales process actually look like?
It was very personal. The agents would set up these village meetings. They'd physically demonstrate the filter, show the clean water coming out, and this is critical, they would visualize the cost savings. They'd literally sit down and help people calculate their monthly spend on firewood versus what a small payment on the filter would be.
So it turns an abstract health benefit into a concrete, I will save this much money calculation.
Yes. And this is where they unlocked the whole market. Because they knew the problem wasn't a lack of desire for the product, it was that big upfront cash barrier.
Right.
So the true game changer was that at these sales meetings, there was a representative from Vision Fund, which is a microfinance institution, or MFI.
And they were there to offer instant credit.
Instant credit. So a family didn't have to save up for months. They could get a 6-month loan, usually around 2.8% interest a month, and take the filter home that day.
And for Hydrologic, what did that mean?
The MFI paid Hydrologic immediately and took on the credit risk. So Hydrologic got its cash right away. It was a perfect system.
And the result of bringing in that financing is, well, it's just a stunning statistic. In the villages where microloans were offered, where that cash barrier was just removed, a massive 92% of all the filters sold were the premium Super Tunsai model.
92%. That number just forces you to rethink everything about poverty and consumer behavior. Why would these low-income families who need to save every penny overwhelmingly choose the more expensive product?
The implication is just so clear. When you solve the upfront cash problem, people don't just default to the cheapest possible option.
No. They prioritize quality, they prioritize convenience, they prioritize aesthetics. They were willing to pay a slightly higher monthly installment for the status and the better design of the Super Tunsai.
It proves that low-income consumers, just like literally everyone else, are driven by aspiration.
And that choice was the financial engine of the whole enterprise. Those higher margins from the 92% super Tunsai uptake, that was the internal subsidy that paid for all the high-cost outreach and logistics. It was a virtuous, self-sustaining loop.
But even with those margins, getting salespeople and products into deep rural areas is incredibly expensive. Was the revenue from sales alone really enough to cover everything?
Often no. That's why they needed a third leg for the stool. And this is where their financial model became a real blueprint for other social enterprises. They turned to carbon finance.
Okay, explain that. How does a water filter generate carbon revenue?
The logic is actually very elegant because the Tunsai filters mean households no longer have to burn wood or charcoal to boil their water.
They're preventing CO2 emissions.
They are actively preventing emissions and saving forests. And that reduction is something you can measure and verify.
And they could sell that.
They could turn that environmental benefit into a tradable asset. They generated verifiable carbon credits, and they got them certified under the gold standard, which is a really rigorous, internationally recognized benchmark.
So that certification gives the credits real value on the international market.
A premium value. And that provided this novel, reliable stream of revenue. Hydrologic projected millions of dollars over 7 years just from selling these credits. And that money acted as an ongoing subsidy. It let them keep the filter prices low for customers, but still cover their massive operational costs. It's what allowed them to reach break-even by around 2014.
And the final results, the impact, it just validates the whole model. They reached over 2 million people by 2016.
And the health outcomes were so compelling. A 46% lower incidence of diarrheal disease among filter users. You think back to those 10,000 child deaths a year. A 46% reduction is saving thousands of lives.
And environmentally, they were saving, 18,000 tons of wood every year in the early figures. It's a solution that hits public health, poverty, and environmental degradation all at once.
And what's really fascinating is they built sustainability into the service, too. It wasn't just about the initial sale. They offered a 2-year warranty, a customer hotline, and made sure replacement ceramic pots were always available.
Which is critical, because without that after-sale support, the health benefits just fade away as the filters break or wear out. That long-term service is what makes it a permanent solution.
It's that blend of commercial discipline with a deep social commitment.
So we've seen how Hydrologic transformed this dire public health crisis into a scalable business. And they did it by being relentlessly focused on their customer, not just by offering a cheap product, but by offering a high-quality aspirational product and then solving the affordability problem with smart credit instead of charity.
The whole case is really a profound challenge to a lot of traditional development models. It just shows that these markets are driven by value and aspiration once you solve for those liquidity constraints. It's not just about the bare minimum.
A really powerful lesson.
It leaves you with a really provocative question. If removing that upfront cash barrier caused 92% of these rural families to choose the higher-end, more expensive product, what does that tell you about the assumptions we usually make about poverty and product quality? And how could you apply this aspirational product strategy, solving the credit problem, to unlock that desire for quality to other essential services like solar energy or sanitation to drive better adoption and sustainability in these markets?
That is a fantastic question for you to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Mission Possible, innovating for the world's most marginalized. This podcast is built on the outstanding work of our students, whose curiosity and commitment drive much of the research and storytelling you hear. Each episode is grounded in academic research and shaped through close collaboration with our partners. To learn more about the research and partnerships behind this podcast, feel free to contact us. Thank you for joining.